It really is the end of the talk, but so in terms of the medication safety resources that we've developed, we have many, and that's where like this talk is just the start, and I want to encourage you to try and to discover everything else we have available. So DeprescribingNetwork.ca has developed, our organization has developed many different tools for patients, and we've grouped them under what we call the Medication Safety Toolkit. So there are a number of them, just a few examples here. So feel free to share with people, and they're all online. With COVID, we've been distributing them, a lot of them through paper, but with COVID, it's been in terms of the distribution, it's mostly virtual now. I think that Janice had a question about one of the slides in terms of I think you're referring to the Denmark initiative when they took away the license, the driver's license versus sleeping pills. It actually helped reduce the use of sleeping pills by 66%. So huge, huge difference over time in older adults. So the other thing that I want to promote are our articles. So we have a number of those available, and these articles are easy to read. They're short, between 2 to 4 pages, and they're on different topics. So I know that we are planning on sharing these with Ruth's help after the conference. So we are just excited to have these and make them available for you. So they're also available on our website. So these are obviously photos taken before the pandemic, but we're really working hard to raise awareness around this issue and make it happen. So you can help us. Canadians are spreading the word, and they are helping us just tell their friends, tell their families about this, and just having these discussions happen. And I hope you will be able to help us as well today. So I'll be answering questions now. I think that Vanessa will be helping me with that. So hopefully we can get to your questions. So Vanessa, are you here?
I am. Can you see me?
Excellent.
Okay. And can everyone else see and hear me?
I can see you.
Okay. Well, that's important because I'm meant to be asking you questions, but just so that others know that I'm here as well. Okay,
Perfect.
good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So there are so many excellent questions, and I've written down the names of the people who asked them in case, for example, I didn't understand them properly, or there's some kind of comments you want to follow up on. And I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but I have written them all down. I will send them to Camille after, and then we'll try to get to you. I'm also gonna skip the ones that are about personal requests on a person's medication. I don't think this is really the place to do that, but I will pass them along to Camille, and she can decide how she wants to handle those. So I'm going to start. This question was from Marie-Claude, and this is interesting. I was wondering about this as well. This is from the beginning of the presentation when you talk about how medications aren't really designed for older people and how their bodies work. Well, so what is the sort of normal group, or who are medications typically designed for, if that's the case?
Okay, so excellent question. Thank you, Marie-Claude. And yeah, I would say there's two, portions to this question. So the first part, once the medication is developed by the industry, the first thing that they'll do is, after testing it on animals, which is the first step on cells, etc., they will want to test it on people that are healthy, okay, just to see what dose works. And I will refer, I don't know if most people here are in Montreal, but if you take the Metro and you think about the ads that they put, and they ask about like people that want to go and farm whatever and do tests on medications, usually these people are young. So that's why they're looking for people in their 20s, 30s that are otherwise healthy, to determine a dose that is safe. That's the first part. Once they have that safe dose, they will test the medicine on someone that is sick and has the condition to see if there actually is an impact. But the problem is, and it's hard for me to say, okay, it's always this age group, but depending on the condition that they're treating, they will often exclude people that are too sick. Let's take diabetes. They will often exclude people that have a kidney function under a certain threshold. But a lot of diabetic patients are actually have kidney function problems. So they are excluded altogether from that group. So you have this people that are actually affected by the condition the most are usually not included in these trials. So the medication will work in someone that isn't as frail, is more robust perhaps, and has less of other chronic conditions too. That's another thing that they will do is, okay, we're testing a medication on diabetes. We're going to exclude anyone who has, say, severe hypertension or has other conditions that are not controlled. Well, how much of that happens in real life? Really. So we're excluding the sickest, and we're excluding people that have more advanced form of the conditions often. Obviously, if the medication is used in younger groups, it happens, for example, contraception for younger females, they'll make sure to include these people that age. But when we're looking at chronic condition, the issue really is that often, because they don't want to get themselves into too much trouble there, and they know that these groups are at higher risk, they will exclude them. So big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big problem. So that kind of leads into one of the other questions. And I mean, you spoke about the need to update either with your doctor, pharmacist, or nurse on a yearly basis about what medications you're taking, can they be deprescribed? But a couple of people raised the question of whether or not there's a website where you can list the medications that you're currently on, and that it will tell you what potential conflicts or issues you may face with those medications.
Excellent question. So I'd say that in terms of a tool that is patient-friendly, there aren't that many, because obviously there are some for pharmacists and doctors, but then it becomes very complex. But one that I can for sure refer people to is called, and that's really one focused on risk and benefit for older adults. So do you want to know if this medication is considered safe for older adults? That will answer the question. And the second part of the question is also, if you were to, it's good for health professionals too, because it says, should this medication, if ever you want to stop it, if it can be stopped abruptly, or rather would need to be tapered, so reduced gradually. So that website is called medstopper.com. And it's been developed by researchers at the University of British Columbia. So it's really not like those are clinicians, they're well respected researchers. So MED, as in Diane, stopper.com. And if ever we send out a communication after, I'll make sure to include it, so you guys can just click on the link. Yeah, I see Janice writing it there. So yeah, that's it. And
thank you.
No problem. And that website, I mean, I'd say it's for health professionals and patients, but you have to be you have to enter a few questions. So if you're not comfortable with that one, I'd say really have that discussion and use it with your doctor or pharmacist, so that they can actually help kind of explain what they're seeing there in terms of the information too. It's always good.
Thank you for that. I think that actually I wrote a note as well. And thank you to Janice for writing it out, because I didn't have hands to do it. So this is an interesting one from Mark. If you're concerned about an older adult in your life and their use of medication, obviously you legally can't give advice, but how can you help support them? Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent question. And obviously it does depend on the role that you're playing in terms of this older adult. Are you a caregiver? Like, you have that actual role to play there. We're not advocating for people to go into their neighbor's life and necessarily just go in and tell them what to do necessarily, but it's also just about sharing your personal feelings. I'd say it will have an impact on the others. So maybe just saying, you know what, I am concerned because I wonder if you're taking too many medications, and it may have an impact on, you're the one who knows that person. So really talking, I guess from a personal standpoint, is how you will have that person listen to you in terms of, you know what, last week you almost fell. I'm concerned about that. So I would like, if it would be possible, can you have that discussion, or can I be there as well if ever it's appropriate for you to be there during that discussion with a health professional. So I'd say that, and then yeah, you can always share resources that are there and just say, read this, it may be relevant, or just, it's, if we're concerned about someone who smokes the cigarette, I mean, in the same way, we can share our thoughts, but that if that individual doesn't want to change or doesn't want to, is not necessarily aware, then, or just is in denial, then it's hard to actually have that impact. Obviously, if you think that person doesn't have, isn't able to take that decision for themselves, they usually have someone involved, like a caregiver or someone in their family, so you can have that discussion as well when appropriate, for sure. So just talking about it from a personal standpoint, and maybe others have suggestions as well. And then Ruth was mentioning, yeah, sometimes someone has a mandate to take care of. Well, when there's a mandate in place, for sure makes it easier. I don't know if you have other tips, Vanessa, or...
I don't know. I was thinking as you were speaking that sometimes in these kinds of situations, people get defensive because they don't want to think that, they're having a hard time. So maybe you could watch this recording with them and sort of share your experience with medication, because it's not only older adults that sometimes struggle with issues with medication. So you could talk about something you deal with, and then they may feel less like they're being targeted, like, show them, as you said, the different literature, or also this issue. And I mean, even just the chat box shows you that there's a lot of people dealing with questions of like, okay, well, I know this is an issue now, but what do I do about it? And other people just don't want to know. It's tricky, and it's got to be sort of looked at by the individual. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, I don't know. If anyone else has suggestions, bring them up in the chat box. Yeah, Ruth makes a good point. It's really important to include seniors in decisions as much as possible, so they don't feel like their independence is being taken. And I think that's it. Like you said, Camille, go to the doctor's appointment with them, but don't take over. Really, you're there to support, not to necessarily make the call unless it's a mandate situation.
Exactly.
A few concerns were brought up by people. I don't know how much time we have more. I'll try and squish this one quickly, although it's not a simple one to answer, but it was brought up by many people, so I want to mention it and see what you have to say. And that's the conflict of having a pharmaceutical industry whose business interest is to make sure that people are, that there are prescriptions being handed out. And are there any changes being made so that there is a little bit more awareness, and are they participating at all in awareness and making sure that seniors are not being overprescribed?
Oh, wow. Excellent question.
Simple question, right?
The first thing I'd say is I've seen them put efforts to deprescribe a medication, but the but is important, is that often it's because they are promoting another medication that is newer and supposedly safer, supposedly been studied more in this group, etc. So are they doing this without any other goal in mind? No. That's the short answer, is that I have not seen any specific efforts from the pharmaceutical industry, but I don't think we're expecting it to come from them. I think that what we need to do as a society is to make sure that the medicine is tested appropriately, and that we have surveillance in place, tracking to see what is happening once the medication is out in the population. Because the problem is we're testing it on 1,000 individual, or I don't know, 5,000. 1,000 is even pretty good, and then we're putting the medication on the market. But that's where we see these effects happening, but are we tracking them appropriately? So we cannot ask the pharmaceutical industry to test a medication on 1 million people before it comes out, or else the medication will cost us. We won't be able to afford it. Yeah. So it's always like a fine balance there, but we need to be able to track it specifically and to adjust the dose accordingly to older adults, females, etc. So putting in place rules for that, actual conditions before medication is approved. Has it been tested in this group appropriately? That's important as well. So
I guess the question, Camille, is who is we? You keep talking about it.
Yeah, the government of Canada. Yeah, government of Canada, in terms of the organizations that are public in place and are there for the well-being of their citizens, because we are, obviously as well supporting the healthcare system. So we want to have the healthcare system there in place to treat patients, not because of their issues caused by their medication. So really putting in place clear policies to track and have surveillance in place for side effects is an important part, firstly. And then really it's about us being aware, and for health professionals, to what we call is like, in terms of older adults, it's start slow and go low. So we want to, like when we start a medication in older adults, we start at a low dose and we increase gradually to see how the tolerance is in that individual. So good clinical care in place, so good training, awareness of health professionals, people that are also on the lookout for side effects in themselves, in their care, in the people around them, and certainly a society that is making sure the medication is not doing too much harm. But I would not count on the pharmaceutical industry to do it without us actually putting in place those regulations.
Yeah.